Jim, does this violate the emoluments clause in the Constitution?
Well, Constitution scholars can argue over that, and I don't think it's not a black and white case. I mean, I think that founders never in their wildest dreams thought we would have a president owning a golf resort, hosting a thing like that. But I don't think we should get down in the legal nitpicking. I mean, it looks bad on its face. I mean, it's a blatant conflict of interest. The president can say he's not going to benefit, but look, he's already benefited. He's already gotten enough national exposure for the Doral Club just in the last day to make this whole thing financially worthwhile. But his argument, this is the perfect place. I have two words. You already mentioned them, Robert, but June and Miami.
Well, you also mentioned security this morning, too, right?
Yeah. So, if you've ever flown into Miami, you know that the Doral is right next to the airport. You feel like you're landing on the golf course when you land in Miami. So they have to secure a huge perimeter around the G7 to keep it safe. You're operating a commercial airport right next to a G7 meeting. Not going to be easy.
The other thing is something you really see in my book, but this is not a rules-based president. If you're going to pick your own club and you know there's going to be an outcry, then you better have procedures in place that are very transparent so you can send Mulvaney out there and say, okay, here are the criteria, here's the search, here are the 5 finalists, here's why we picked Doral. And there better be a very good neutral explanation for why that was chosen as the best. Are we hearing any of that? Absolutely not. And, it's impulsive. It looks like people told him don't do it. He did it anyway. Why is he doing it, given the uproar? I think a lot of it, knowing Trump, is his character. He can, walk around. And, I mean, it's one thing to go to a hotel in Biarritz, which, by the way, is a nice place in August. But here, this is his own thing. He can say, look at this. I built this. Look how great this is. It's a chance to show off in front of these world leaders, and he wants their approval.
Although it also highlights the Washington Post did a piece yesterday about how revenue has fallen since he took office, right? It shines a spotlight on that, too.
Yeah, by the way, I don't think it's so profitable. I think it's, it's the big
Those
revenue.
are the revenues, yeah.
Right,
so they reported on the disclosure forms as net income, but it's truly sales. It's total revenue. So we don't know what the profitability is. In fact, there was a tax attorney working for the Trump organization who was hired to lower their tax bill. So she had an interest in arguing that things were bad. She said operating income was down 69% over a 2-year period. So that suggests, even though these sales numbers are down, that operating income is down 69%. That shows that they're hurting.
You mentioned Deutsche Bank finance.
Yeah.
Are they still paying? I mean, do we know if that financing remains in place?
I don't know whether it was refinanced or what the status is. That was 2012.
Okay. So,
and he had promised, he bought it for $150. He had promised to do extensive renovations. And so we don't know how much of that money went into renovations, how much went into the purchase. People said the renovations were generally good. And that it's a quality club. It also, structurally, it's got a lot of different buildings so people can house their country in one building. So it's well suited for that. But yes, the Deutsche Bank piece, given Deutsche Bank's interest now, is interesting.
Jim, in 2017, Eric Trump had said, quote, there are lines we would never cross when it comes to mixing business with anything government. I think this flies in the face of that a little bit.
This is a line that they didn't just cross it, they leapfrogged, totally over it. Again, the appearances, and it's so striking that they knew the appearances were going to be bad. Mulvaney said, I recognized that this was going to, create a furor. So why do it? I mean, it's, again, in and of itself, it's probably not the biggest deal. I'm sure they can go there. It'll be fun. It'll be air conditioned. They can huddle. Maybe they even have underground tunnels. Who knows? But why do it? For this, sure, there are plenty of other places that you could hold this.
And we should also say a lot of people thought Trump would use the presidency to get rich, and you could argue whether he has or hasn't. But overall, according to the disclosure forms, his businesses across the board, except for the hotel, are all down. And the biggest profit center for Doral recently has been Republican events. So you take those out of the equation, and a lot of people, given the polarizing nature of Donald Trump, it has broadly hurt his business.
Right, which is something he says to argue that he's sacrificed for the country.
Correct.
Right?
Of course, he has not divested those businesses, we should say.
That's right.
In any way.
That's right. I mean, he had that day we had those famous stack of papers showing that it would be a separate entity, would be some kind of trust, and he owns it. He basically owns it.
Yeah, Jim, were all those papers just empty papers?
Look, I don't think. Look, Trump is not somebody who's ever been constrained by any kind of really verbal agreement, handshake agreement, written agreement, tax laws. I mean, he does what he wants to do, and I think this is just very, very consistent with that very straightforward. What's in this for me?
And it is a gap in our ethics laws where any other administration official has to adhere to a certain set of divestiture requirements, as we've seen. The president is exempt from that, and until this presidency, we were talking about this on air last February of his election. People didn't realize what a gaping hole this is in the ethics laws as it relates to the president and the vice president, who are exempt from the same rules that govern most administration officials and members of Congress.